Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 podcast, and we're back after a little break. Made it that solid year. Like you said, Ben, everybody needs a break once in a while.
Everybody needs a break once in a great while.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to come back stronger, Sheriff, and been doing some sheriffing lately.
Yep.
So it's been a busy time of year, but we're back on the air and here today to talk about pursuits, of which we've had a few lately. You had your State of the Office recently, and there was since 2019, so a 5-year look back, so over 100% increase in the number of pursuits that we've had. So we went from 16 in 2019 to 33 in 2023, and 5-year average been 24, which is a couple a month, which is kind of a lot for us. And I've tried to brainstorm some of the reasons why.
Well, we had a serial runner for a while.
Yeah, that certainly probably moved the needle a little bit. And I didn't even run the 24 numbers yet. That'll be included in that. Yeah. So, and it's like a lot of things. When we look at our volume of stats, you can have one or two people, even burglaries, whatever else, really kind of skew the numbers if you get somebody that goes on a tear. But, I'll just throw this out there to you guys. Since COVID-19, it seems like we've seen an increase in the willingness of some drivers to maybe disregard speed limits, other traffic laws. There's always been some of that, but it just seems like it's been a little bit maybe higher frequency and higher severity with, people driving over 100 miles an hour. Quite a bit. It seems like maybe more people that are willing to run from law enforcement or willing to risk it.
I think there was a slowdown in enforcement during COVID.
Yeah.
And so I think some people just figured that slowdown was going to continue and then they could just drive however they wanted to and we're going to get caught for it. Sure. And I know the State Patrol across the state has had a number of speeders that have been in excess of 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. I think something we're seeing across the board, and we've responded to that a little bit by shifting our patrol tactics, Ben. Too. We've kind of made a conscious decision that we're going to prioritize more proactive traffic enforcement.
Yes.
And just that idea, Sheriff, I know you and I were talking about that relationship between traffic safety and the bigger picture of public safety. That they're connected, and I think when our deputies are out and actively enforcing traffic laws, they're going to be making contacts with people that are maybe out there looking to do other crimes of opportunity.
Not too many thieves or burglars walk to their scene of their crime. They're going to drive.
Yes.
Especially out in the county.
Yep, and if they're not going to obey the laws against stealing and all that sort of thing, they're certainly not going to obey the laws on registering their vehicle and, maintaining it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, traffic laws are important for traffic safety and public safety, for keeping other motorists safe on the road, but they're also used as a tool for crime suppression, crime prevention, things like that too. And
looking beyond the traffic stop.
Absolutely. And we've had some really good examples of deputies doing that recently too. A lot of simple traffic violations turn into drug arrests, warrant arrests, things like that. So we've had some deputies just doing some really good police work out there lately. I'm going to just bring you guys back to a story. This was, I don't remember if either one of you were there, but this was at the MAD Awards a couple years ago. There was a sheriff from Oklahoma. He's retired now, but came and he shared a story of a pursuit that he responded to. It was back in 1980. And the officer was, not him, but another officer from another agency was pursuing a motorcycle that was drag racing and entered a residential area, 25 miles an hour. We have a lot of those, throughout Lincoln, throughout surrounding areas, towns and villages in Lancaster County. And the motorcycle ran a stop sign and the officer followed through, and shortly thereafter, the pursuit ended in a really terrible crash when the officer collided with a third-party uninvolved vehicle. Somebody that was not involved in the pursuit, just somebody that was, wrong place, wrong time. And the crash ended up killing a 2-year-old child and her mother. And so the sheriff, who was telling the story was police chief at the time, and he recalled that he was there kind of in the aftermath, and they had moved the 2-year-old to an ambulance and was covered with a sheet, and so he had agreed to sit in the ambulance with this deceased child while they were trying to get the vehicle extricated out of the crash scene, things like that. I think the mom was still trapped in the wreckage, and so it was as this wreckage was being cleared that the police chief recognized that the car was actually his own family, and it didn't take too long for him to realize that the 2-year-old that was laying at his feet was actually his own child. And I can't think of something that's much more traumatic than that for the officer that's involved in the pursuit, the innocent third parties who were killed in this case by the pursuit, but then for you to be kind of in the middle, so an uninvolved law enforcement officer who's helping to try and kind of put the pieces back together to find out that people in your own profession kind of contributed to the death of your own family, and so I think that is kind of setting the stage for the discussion that we're talking today a little bit. And I'm going to read something from our policy, but it says, motor vehicle pursuits are among the most dangerous actions undertaken by law enforcement officers, both in terms of danger to deputies and to the public. And that's how we start out our policy when we're discussing motor vehicle pursuits with our deputies. And I think it's important to remember that because the stakes are very high. And obviously the story I gave is a pretty extreme example of that. Hopefully one that never happens again. But I think sadly there have been some others that have shared some themes from that in the years since 1980. And it's a balance. Would you say, Sheriff?
Oh, absolutely. I was just, we don't want people to think they can run from law enforcement with impunity, but we also have a duty to not mimic their recklessness and to get an innocent third party injured or killed. So
yep.
There's really it really is a balancing act on, trying to apprehend the violator versus keeping the public safe.
Yep.
And it's tough.
Well, some agencies had a no pursuit policy.
Right.
And I think that ended up hurting us a lot more because, people just decided, you know what, all I got to do is go fast for a couple blocks. They're not going to chase me anymore, and that's what's going to end up happening.
Get away.
Yeah, and embrazened a lot of folks to do that.
Yeah, and humans are funny sometimes in what they'll try to do or get scared or we don't always even know the reasons why they run. That's the one the other day. It ended up being a felony level pursuit, and when we caught the guy, because we usually catch him.
Yes. We may not catch him that day, but we'd get him.
Yeah. And, really had that guy stopped, he would have probably been looking at a couple tickets and been on his way, for some infraction level stuff and been on his way. So,
yeah. He got to stay with us for a little while.
Yes. So, it is necessary to pursue vehicles who represent a risk to public safety, and we've seen what happens in communities where, there's somewhat of a blind eye or free pass to even property crimes. And, we weigh that balance between property crimes and violent crimes and crimes against persons and things like that. But I think you're right. And we say this in our policy too, Ben, that a policy of not engaging in pursuits would represent an open invitation to some suspects to evade apprehension for law enforcement violations by routinely fleeing in vehicles. And that's certainly something that we can't have either, because then we just end up with a kind of a lawless community where people can do what they want.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
Yeah, they're so low frequency, but so high risk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one of the great things I think we end up doing too, and we preach to our deputies and to the sergeants who are usually the ones managing the pursuit, that if it's not something life and death and we figure out who the driver is and we know, we stop.
Yep.
We'll get them at a different date, different time when they're not able to run from us from a vehicle. And I think that perspective lets the public know how much we care for their safety and not willing to put them in danger.
Yeah, and that balance is really spelled out for us, that we're not going to engage in pursuits when the risk to public safety created by the pursuit outweighs the necessity for immediate apprehension. And that's kind of a hard culture to break sometimes. You grow up seeing car chases and stuff on TV and movies, and I think some people have in their minds when they get into this profession that that's what we do. That's what it's all about. And sometimes we have to.
Well, there's certain crimes out there that we would chase them till the cows come home on, because the danger of that individual staying out in the public outweighs the danger of what the pursuit is causing. Yeah,
somebody that's, there's been some really scary examples of people, intentionally using their car to do harm to other people, and it's one thing just trying to get away, but if you're trying to use a vehicle to hurt other people, if you're been involved in some sort of violent crime, sometimes we just don't have a choice, right. And we got to get that person off the street. But it's there's a little bit of human nature to it too, of the chase the rabbit kind of reflex. And so it does take a little bit of professionalism and maturity from our deputies to kind of take a breath, think about what's going on, and making some good decisions when it comes to our pursuits.
And that's another reason why you have a sergeant or above overseeing those pursuits and listening and being outside it and being able to make that call of, hey, this needs to be terminated. Yeah. And I think the public also needs to know we scrutinize them afterwards. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not like, it's over.
Yep.
We do pursuit reviews that it's looked at by several levels.
Yeah.
But, it's and what you said exactly right, Ben. The sergeant can look at it objectively,
right, and
not have the emotion of, the deputy involved in the pursuit. And we all know the adrenaline rush that gives you when somebody runs from you and you're trying to chase them. It's difficult to take a deep breath and look at the totality of the circumstances when you're intimately involved. So the sergeant's a very, very strong component in our pursuit policy.
Well, and we stress to our folks too, and sometimes you think of the reasons that lead to law enforcement deaths and injuries. You think of fights, you think of shootings and things like that. But since 2019, there were 264 law enforcement officers killed in auto-related
motor vehicle
crashes and auto-related incidents, and everything from being involved in the crash itself to maybe somebody that's putting out stop sticks and gets struck by a fleeing vehicle or something like that. And so it's dangerous for our cops. It's dangerous for the people that are in the fleeing vehicle. But that national data also tells us that those innocent third parties, at a pretty alarming rate, are injured too. Now, Nebraska's kind of at the lower end of the stats, and I think that's somewhat due to some of the strict liability statutes that really kind of put local governments and city and county agencies, state and local agencies on the hook for damages to those innocent third parties. So we probably, and I guess I like to think, rightly so, probably take a much stricter approach to our pursuit policies than maybe some other states do, just because we really have in addition to just the human side of it, there's certainly a financial side of it that can leave a pretty good sting.
Yes. And that's another reason, state law requires us to go through our pursuit policy every year. Mm-hmm. but we go way above and beyond our EVOC, which is our driving training for everybody. We do at least that once a year, driving tests to say and do the pursuits and do some of that training in pursuits, just so it, like we said, it's so low frequency and to get those, and especially newer deputies, a chance to get used to that, because your first pursuit is there's 100 billion things going through your mind at that point in time, and even seasoned deputies can sometimes get caught up in the middle of it. So we take it so serious, and we really go above and beyond what we're supposed to in training, just so that we make sure the public's safe.
Well, we're really lucky. We've got a lot of on-staff. EVOC stands for Emergency Vehicle Operations Course, but EVOC certified instructors that we have in-house that are able to put on that training. And I know, there's some tactical training when it comes to driving itself, and we do a lot of that stuff and practicing on the stop stick deployment. And just recently, we began training deputies on tactical vehicle interventions.
Yes.
People have probably heard of pit maneuvers. It's slightly different than that, but where you're actually making intentional contact with a vehicle to take them out of the pursuit in certain circumstances.
Correct. The funny thing in law enforcement, there's been a lot of technology in certain aspects of it. But in stopping a pursuit, there just really hasn't had any change for a lot of years. No new equipment or anything has really come in to do that. And I tell you, if we could figure out something to make those pursuits stop real quick and get the engine, we'd probably make millions of dollars on that.
Yeah. And I think that even in addition to, and we touched on this before, of any of the tactics and the tools and tricks and things that are out there, the decision making and knowing when to push that button and when to turn it off, I think is probably more important than any of the driving tactics that we're teaching our folks too.
Well, it depends where the pursuit occurs. You're in a residential area where a bunch of kids and it's 5 o'clock on a summer Saturday. You better be really careful on when you're doing that compared to out in the middle of nowhere on a rock road.
Yeah, and we're obviously not gonna give away every single bit of our policy on this, and we don't want to necessarily tell bad guys where they can and can't run from us. But we made the point earlier that just because we stop a pursuit doesn't mean we stop the case.
Correct.
And that's, I think, the thing for people to remember is that. We've got a lot of resources at our disposal. We've got a lot of really good partner agencies that as their policy allows, will join us in pursuits. Yes. Sometimes we'll hand off things if crime doesn't know county borders, city borders, state borders. There is no magic stop if we cross an imaginary line. We can keep going if we need to. But we can also lean on some of those partners. The Nebraska State Patrol Air Wing was just up the other day.
Yep.
We had unmarked cars that were able to, after the pursuit was terminated, found it later at a different location, followed it, unknowingly at some safe speeds without the vehicle fleeing from them. And fortunately, we were able to follow them to a location where they ran out of gas and were trying to put more gas in their car.
Right.
So,
there have been a number of different advances in technology. One is like a puck, and it actually shoots out from a patrol car, in front of a patrol car, adheres to the stolen vehicle, and it's a tracking device.
Yep.
And I'm really not sure how effective those are. Secondly, there's another device that, it's like a volleyball net, and it's mounted to the front of a patrol car. I think an arm comes out and it basically wraps itself around the tire of the vehicle being pursued and makes it so it can't go anymore. It just stops. But like I said, I don't know how effective those have been, and I just haven't heard of any agencies that I know of that have used those devices. We can use a deal like OnStar, for example.
Yep.
If we know the vehicle information, we we can get OnStar to shut the vehicle down.
Yes.
But there's certain criteria you have to meet there as well. But that is certainly an advance in technology that's helped us.
Yeah, and it just takes time to get a hold of them, do that. And when you're pursuing 5 minutes is a long time.
It is.
Oh yeah, yeah, and depending on your speeds, you're covering a lot of ground.
Yes.
And it's again depending on the situation, we're going to do everything that we can to end those pursuits quickly with the suspect in custody. And if we can't, do everything that we can to find the people that are involved after the fact. So,
I let people know if we're able to identify the vehicle, we will go after it and we will tow it as evidence and we will hold it.
Yep.
Until we can figure out who was driving it, and we will do every investigative lead that we have to try to solve this. Because I would like. And I think everybody here, the word out is if you run from Lancaster County, we're going to come and find you and we're going to put you in jail.
Yep. Hey, I'm Captain Vik with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. When it comes to your career, don't settle for good enough. Don't settle for ordinary. We won't either. Be different, be better, be exceptional. Start your future today at joinlso.com. I think you hit on it earlier, Ben, but just our monitoring process of pursuits itself, both when they happen live and then also, after the fact, when we're doing these pursuit reviews. And usually what that looks like is a supervisor is going to review it. It's going to go through a couple layers because then it's going to come to me as a patrol captain, and then you're still going to take a look at it as well.
Correct.
And we're watching videos, we're looking at speeds, we're looking at road conditions, we're comparing that to the radio traffic, and so we're really kind of looking at these things inside and out. Not necessarily just to get people in trouble. Sometimes people get in trouble for these, and we have to be accountable too if our policy is violated, and that's a big thing that we're looking at in those reviews is did our tactics in the pursuit comply with our policy? And that's one of the big things we're looking for. But we're also looking for training examples.
How can we improve the deputy?
Yeah, and or do our policies need to be changed?
Right.
Is there something we're missing in our policy that should be there that shouldn't, or vice versa? So there's a number of different benefits from those pursuit reviews.
Yeah, and we've also baked a little bit of this in, and I can't give away all the secrets, but even into some of our promotional processes for sergeants, because these are some of the most important information for our sergeants to know, is our pursuit policy and what to do and how to respond when a pursuit is taking place. Because there's so many things in this job that you can take time to research, look up, figure it out. But when one of your deputies gets on the radio and says, "I'm, southbound on Highway 77 in pursuit, speeds are 110 miles an hour," I got to have right now. Yeah. What we're doing. So there's no time to look at the manual at that point.
Well, and there's certain important questions that the deputy needs to make sure he's getting out, and if he's not, the sergeant needs to make sure that information is getting out. To
traffic conditions, roadway conditions.
Yeah. What's the violation? Because first degree homicide suspect or somebody going 10 over the speed limit, it's night and day.
Yep, absolutely. One of the things that that we want to make sure that at least the public knows is that we do take that balance of the risk to them and our need to apprehend these people really seriously. And on the one hand, there's probably some people listening to this saying, pounding their fists on the table, saying, "Gosh darn it, why don't you just stop these guys, chase them down, take them to jail?" But on the other hand, we don't want those innocent third parties that are getting hurt for a stop sign violation or speeding or something like that. We don't always know the reasons why these people are running. Could it be that they just murdered somebody? Well, maybe. But if we don't know that, we've got to balance out the.
Could it be they're running for somebody that's trying to hurt them? I mean,
certainly. Yeah.
Well, the thing in reviewing these over my years, it's usually somebody who's suspended, has a warrant, or is drunk. has been the majority of the pursuits that have occurred.
And so that just adds a little bit more complexity to the whole formula, because if they're drunk, if they're driving while high, it just makes it that much more hazardous.
Yeah, and their perception reaction time is lower, and all of those things. So, you know, if people are listening and they are ever involved in, you know, maybe a pursuit is coming up on the area that they're also driving in. Anytime we see sirens and hear sirens and see lights, you know, you should pull to the right for that. And if you find yourself in that immediate area, just make sure that you pull as far as you can on the right side of the road, safely come to a stop. Just remain in your vehicle with your seatbelt fastened, and just let the officers and the suspect pass you by.
And beware, there may be another. Now, certainly. Our policy says that 2 can pursue. And so people need to know there may be another cruiser coming by pretty quick. So get your head on a swivel and watching.
And our policies affect our deputies.
Yes.
Our policies do not affect other agencies. And so, you know, if we're in pursuit and another agency comes to help us, we have no operational control over those folks, whoever they might be. And so just because you might know what we will, how we'll do it or what we'll do, we don't know what those other agency officers will do.
Right. Yeah. You know, above and all, I just want to thank our folks for approaching this with as much maturity and professionalism as they do. I think our deputies do a really, really good job 99% of the time. And, you know, the 1% we deal with. If it's a newer deputy that they're learning, or you know, somebody makes a mistake and we have to correct it. But really 99% of the time, our folks are approaching these with just a lot of professionalism and commitment to that public safety mission that we're here to serve.
Well, and with these, that's not the only pursuit that can come from them, because a lot of times they'll end up in a foot pursuit after that too. So as we've come through our profession, when I first went through, and it's been 31 years ago, you know, you just ran as hard as you could after them. And we've kind of learned now that you do that. Sometimes you place yourself in harm's way, especially if the individual has a desire to hurt you, and you can run right into a gunfight and not be ready for it.
Yeah.
I don't think people, for the vast majority of people who flee from us, are not looking to hurt somebody.
Correct.
They're looking to get away.
Right.
And they just don't, they're not able to see the potential consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you know, ultimately it's our folks, it's your deputies. They're the man or woman in the arena that we're asking to make these decisions, and they're under high stress, limited information, often imperfect circumstances of you know, weather, time of day, things like that. And so there's a lot on a deputy's plate when they're, and a sergeant's plate when they're making these decisions. But again, I think our folks by and large do just a really, really good job of approaching that with maturity.
Yeah, another thing we probably need to mention is, you know, there's a difference in how we do it with unmarked and marked cruisers too. And we have certain rules on that, because we understand the public's not looking for this unmarked car going flying by, even if it does have lights and sirens on. It's just not something normal for them to see.
Yeah, and I think I could probably count on one hand, you know, the number of pursuits that I can think of with, you know, with an unmarked car being the primary vehicle. Usually we try to hand that off as soon as we can. Yeah,
with the Fugitive Task Force, though, I believe we've had a few more since the adoption of that unit.
Pretty short, hopefully, because they're always not trying to catch people when they're in a car, just for that reason.
Oh, and that's one of the biggest things we've really strived to do here at the Sheriff's Office is get them out of the car where they cannot run. I'd much rather have a foot pursuit. I'd much rather have them locked down in a house or gas in their car and get totally surprised that we're there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's, you know, there was a third person in that vehicle that I described earlier, that story of that sheriff that lost his wife and daughter, but his 4-year-old daughter was rescued from a burning vehicle, that burning vehicle, when a passerby came upon it, and she ended up surviving. So tragic story. But, ultimately he was able to get to the hospital and be there for his daughter. But I think, we try to approach our work from the standpoint of, would we be chasing the car we're chasing if our family were in the way? And I think that's, how our deputies have to look at it. Is the reason I'm chasing this vehicle that important, that much of a risk to public safety, that if my family or your family were, in the way, could I justify why I'm doing what I'm doing? So pretty serious business, but it's one that we take seriously, and one that we're going to continue to pursue when we need to.
Yeah. I just don't think you can have a policy as an agency that just says we never will.
Right.
And I know several of them, even some close to us, have had that, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, that is all the time that we have for the 902 podcast today. We appreciate everybody tuning in. If you enjoyed what you heard on this episode, be sure to follow and subscribe so that you can catch the other episodes of the 902 podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. You can also find us on social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. And just recently, the state of Nebraska has implemented a $7,500 recruiting bonus for new law enforcement officers. www.joinlso.com is where you can get in touch with a recruiter to learn more about opportunities that are available right now at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. Thanks for listening.